Guys, for the last few months, I have been covering the Harry Potter HBO TV series, all of the news, rumors, and leaks, and I've also been planning out my vision of what the Harry Potter HBO TV series might look like episode by episode, inspired by the channel Enchanted Lens, who is doing the same thing in a great way. So this is not an original idea, I just loved what they were doing and I wanted to do the same thing on my channel. I've already done the first 3 episodes and there's a playlist of them on my channel now if you want to catch up. But today I'm going to look at episode 4. Now, just a quick thought. In the last episode where I went through episode 3, I talked about how I was going to make this 6 episodes, but I've decided I'm going to make my vision 8 episodes. Even if that's not what we will get, this is just my vision of the show and what I think is going to happen. So this is episode 4 of 8, and we left off the last episode with Harry being sorted and getting into the Gryffindor common room and his first kind of night at Hogwarts. And we pick up at episode 4 with the next chapter in the book, The Potions Master. What's up guys, Mike here. Welcome back to the channel. For more videos like this, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Let's do it. Okay, so episode 4 is where we're going to see a lot more of Hogwarts, and maybe I've mispaced this whole thing because I didn't plan this out in advance, to be honest. I'm just kind of making it up as I go along. Maybe 4 episodes is too long till we like properly get into Hogwarts stuff, but to be honest, this is just where we're at, so I'm going to keep going with it as I've done it. Now, in the books, we get a lot more of Harry and Ron kind of just going about their classes at Hogwarts, and I would love to see a little bit more of that here, with a bunch of the side characters kind of popping in and out so we can just explore a bit more of Hogwarts. I'd love to see interactions with Nearly Headless Nick, with Peeves, and especially Mr. Filch, who will be very relevant in this episode. And in the books, Ron and Harry get lost on the way to a class. They end up accidentally trying to enter the 3rd floor corridor, which Filch blasts them for because, of course, it's out of bounds. I think this would be an interesting setup for what we know is about to come, and actually how I'm planning on ending this episode, so that needs to be there. They are then actually saved by Professor Quirrell, interestingly, who kind of rescues them from Filch, which would be a really interesting scene to see and I think should happen. Basically, I think we need to see a lot more of Quirrell and his character. The reveal in the movies that Quirrell was the villain the whole time is quite a good one, and I think they do it fine, but building his character up more as a bit of a wimp and that stuttering kind of pathetic guy he is will add insult to injury at the end of the season. Here, I'd love to see almost a montage of Harry going through different classes. I mean, he has a class with Professor Binns. We never see him in the movies, but he is a ghost teacher and Harry hates his classes because they're very boring. It'd be good to see a bit of that mixed in with some of the transfiguration classes. I think they start with Professor McGonagall teaching them how to turn like a needle into a quill or something similar like that. Maybe just rushing through in a montage of a bunch of the classes Harry is going to just kind of get an intro of life at Hogwarts. Even kind of put in little clips of him walking around the building, getting lost on the staircases with Ron, in the Great Hall eating. Stuff like that would be really interesting in a montage setting. And in the books, we also get a description of a class with Professor Quirrell that I would love to see a bit of, at least maybe in this montage, where he talks about fighting off vampires in Romania and also where he got his turban from. I think that will also add a little bit more context to the story and a little bit more context to Professor Quirrell's character. So I envision a lot of that in a montage of like Harry's first week at Hogwarts. And I think the montage kind of crashes down to Harry in potions class for the first time, and we get Paparazzi's Snape walking in. And to be fair, again, like the movies actually do this really well. Snape's intro to Harry in this class, you really get the meanness of Professor Snape, the snideness of Snape, but you also get, if you go back and watch those movies, because as we know, Alan Rickman did know the twist before anyone else that Snape loved Lily and that he loved her eyes and sees her eyes in Harry. You also get that longingness from Snape to Harry in that scene. So I think having Snape bully Harry here as well would be really good. I mean, not for Harry, of course, but for us to see. And there's a few interactions in the book that I think were not included in the movie, or at least were deleted scenes. I'm pretty sure the interaction in the book does have that line, "Clearly fame isn't everything, Mr. Potter." And then Harry says, "Well, clearly Hermione knows, so why don't you ask her?" I do want to build out Harry's character from the start as being a little bit more sassy. I mean, I think one thing we really ignore with Harry is that he was raised as like a social outcast by the Dursleys. Like, I don't think Harry actually has a good concept of like what social interaction is supposed to look like. And often in the books, he just says stuff that might be a bit forward and aggressive because like, I don't think he understands like normal social setups. But also, he's like perfectly willing to stand up to a bully like Snape, probably because he's been standing up to the Dursleys his whole life. So there's that too. Snape is also very, very mean to Neville, like particularly mean to Neville in the books. In fact, he's particularly cruel to Neville in the books. And I'd love to see that kind of check it in the first few seasons as well, because I think it'll give more weight in season 3 when Neville's Boggart becomes Professor Snape. After Snape's class, I think Harry and Ron go down to Hagrid's and they will talk to Hagrid about how mean Snape is. Of course, this is where we'll start seeing some of the issues with a black Professor Snape playing out, because Harry will immensely dislike Snape after just one interaction, which could be misconstrued as racism. But I think as long as Snape has that class and is very mean to everyone, particularly Harry, Neville, and Ron, and even Hermione, then I think it'll be justified for Harry to not like him. In the books, I'm pretty sure Hagrid actually says to Harry that Snape would have no reason to dislike him, which kind of comes across as a huge lie. Like, I'm sure Hagrid would be fully aware of Snape's bitterness towards James. And it's also interesting looking back now that none of the teachers at the school, except maybe Dumbledore, even had an inkling that Snape loved Lily. Like, surely you'd pick up on that as a teacher, but maybe not. And also, this is irrelevant to the video anyway, sorry. So then I think we will get to the first flying lesson with Madame Hooch, and I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but they do this pretty well in the movies too. I mean, maybe there's a more in-depth lesson of how to fly. Maybe Madame Hooch gets more time to shine. I mean, this is her pretty much only big scene in the entire books. Also, side note, thanks to a few people who did point out that Madame Hooch actually does appear prominently in book 3 when Harry gets the firebolt. She has to like supervise him while he tries it out. And I'm pretty sure she falls asleep in the bleachers of the Quidditch pitch. So, you know, there's something to look ahead for Madame Hooch. We're gonna get a bunch of the same stuff here. You know, Neville will fly out of control, he'll hurt his wrist, then the whole Remembrall thing will happen, Malfoy and Harry will fly around, and Harry will catch the Remembrall. Professor McGonagall will see it and bring him in to meet Oliver Wood. One difference is, in the books, I'm pretty sure even though McGonagall is impressed by Harry, she's also angry at him for flying unsupervised, but she like can't contain her excitement. And I think this is where we meet Oliver Wood. He'll become a much bigger character in the next episode, but it's good to have an intro to him here. The last act of this episode will be something that was completely omitted from the movies, and to be honest, I think it's good that this was omitted from the movies. I don't actually think this chapter in the book, The Midnight Duel, is actually super relevant, and it just seems like uncharacteristic for everyone involved to do this anyway. It is in the books a thing that leads the gang to discover something very important, which I'll get to in a sec. So I think after Harry meets Wood, maybe the gang are at like dinner in the Great Hall, and Malfoy walks over with Crabbe and Goyle and challenges them to a midnight duel in the trophy room. I think Ron will get up, get really defensive and in Malfoy's face, and I really want to see more of that Ron. I mean, we all know Ron got absolutely jibbed in the movies, but he is such a loyal guy who stands up for his friends and gets in bullies' faces, and he like is such a shining character in the books that is never shown in the movies. I mean, I could do a whole video about how Ron was robbed in the movies, but maybe I'll get to that another time. Anyway, Ron and Harry sneak out at midnight to meet Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle in the trophy room for this midnight duel. Also, Ron offers to be Harry's second in the duel, which is apparently if Harry dies, Ron takes over the duel. And then Malfoy in the book sizes up Crabbe and Goyle, and I think ends up choosing Crabbe to be his second, which could be a funny detail as well that shows off a lot of Malfoy's character and value set. Ron and Harry sneak out, and Hermione tries to stop them, but ends up locked out of the common room, and Neville is also with them in the book because he forgot the password to the common room. In the movies, it's just Ron, Harry, and Hermione, but in the book, it is Ron, Harry, Hermione, and Neville, and I really hope they do that in the TV show as well, because I think Neville is going to be a much bigger character here. They end up in the trophy room only to find that Malfoy has completely tricked them. He was never going to show up after all anyway, and then Mr. Filch gets a hint that there are students out of bed, and that is what actually leads them to end up in the third floor corridor and meet Fluffy for the first time. I'm really curious as to what the design of Fluffy will be. Like, will they just use the same design or totally redesign it? That'll be an interesting tidbit, but I think the gang all run away, as you would if you saw a three-headed dog, and they're all afraid. And I think they end up back in the common room, and to be honest, I see the episode ending with a pretty classic line where Hermione looks at them and says,
"I'm going to bed before either of you come up with another clever idea to get us killed. Or worse, expelled.
I think you see Harry, Ron, and Neville kind of like sadly or gloomily walking up the stairs to the boys' dormitory, and the episode ends there. And that sets us up for the next episode, which will start at the next day, presumably, where Harry learns all about Quidditch. Whew, thank you so much for watching, guys. Hey, if you like this video, make sure you check out the whole series on my channel and comment below what are your thoughts, what are your ideas for this episode, how would you have done it? I would love to know. While I've got you, I'm all over the internet doing dumb stuff that I think is cool. I have a blog, I have a podcast, everything is down there. And if you like this video, YouTube thinks you might like this one too. But if you just want to binge a bunch of Harry Potter related content, there's a whole playlist of those videos right here. That is pretty much it from me for now. My name's Ready Mike. This has been The Inside of My Mind, and I will catch you later. See ya.